Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Steve Schwab, and I am CEO of the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. I am so proud to welcome you in joining us this evening for what I hope is a therapeutic opportunity for us all to lean on one another, be together, learn more about what's going on around our world and how we can help one another. And spend some time with some friends of mine who are going to help us sort out the kinds of feelings and emotions we're feeling at this really historic time in our country's history. Today marked the end of the longest period of war in US history, a profound moment in the history of America. Our mission in Afghanistan has been an important mission over the last 20 years, and what we're here to tell each of you who've gathered with us this evening is that your mission mattered. I'd like to welcome our special partners in this evening's program. First and foremost, Wounded Warrior Project, who makes so much of our work and mission at the Elizabeth Dole Foundation possible. I'm also honored to recognize the Department of Veterans Affairs and TAPS, who are key partners in offering this evening's program as well. Before we get too far into this evening's event, I'd like to introduce Mike Linnington, who is the CEO of Wounded Warrior Project. Mike's going to share some of his thoughts before we turn to our experts and start the important dialogue with you all. So Mike, take it away.
Steve, thank you very much for those thoughtful opening remarks and for being such a great partner of Wounded Warrior Project. And certainly a great thanks to Senator Elizabeth Dole, who continues to inspire me every day as the epitome of a selfless servant. Wounded Warrior Project and the Elizabeth Dole Foundation have been working together closely as partners since 2013. Our collaboration with Elizabeth Dole and many of the others on this call today certainly are part of our core values and demonstrate that no one organization alone can meet the needs or challenges of our post 9/11 veterans, families, caregivers, and survivors. Together, we work together to serve and support thousands of wounded veterans, families, caregivers, and loved ones. And as Steve said, today especially, they need us more than ever before. Our efforts have been ongoing since 2003 at Wounded Warrior Project, where we started providing comfort items bedside to wounded veterans coming off the battlefield of Iraq and Afghanistan. And sadly, this week, we were doing the same mission with the events that happened just a few days ago. We also know that the impacts of war, certainly the last 20 years of war, can last a lifetime. And we at Wounded Warrior Project are committed to meeting those needs, like all of you on this call today, and most importantly, for being there for each other. You know, as a post 9/11 veteran myself, I served alongside many brave and selfless troops in Afghanistan, and I befriended many Afghan soldiers, Afghan police, interpreters, and NATO friends that helped us conduct our mission. And as Steve said, I know many of you today are sharing the same thoughts I am, and that is memories of a time in a place far away, but certainly not far away in our hearts. I want you all to know that your mission mattered, and your service and sacrifice mattered, not just to the Afghan people, but to the American people, and will never be forgotten. You kept our country safe for 20 years. You brought accountability to those who attacked us 20 years ago in New York and Shanksville and the Pentagon, where I was. And you also provided opportunities for Afghan people they never thought possible. And I will tell you, I believe today that those freedoms will not be forgotten despite the events of the last several weeks. And the future for the Afghan people, although turbulent, I think we don't know how that will end up eventually based on everyone's service and sacrifice. Wounded Warrior Project stands ready to provide support for all of you, with all of you on this call today, to all of our alumni, but all veterans, post 9/11 veterans. And we're in the middle right now of outreach calls to 40,000 of our alumni that serve directly in Afghanistan. And we're increasing support available through our resource center and our mental health triage team. So if you need help, please reach out to us especially in the coming weeks and months, because we need to be there for each other. One other point I'd like to make, Steve, just a little bit off script, is as our service members come home, I think it's important to remember the work of the last 20 years with the development of the GWAT Memorial in Washington, D.C., the National Mall. And I just ask everybody to remember those that have served and sacrificed on behalf of all of us. And I look forward to the thoughtful comments from the experts on the panel this evening, and be available if anyone needs an ear to reach out to me for help as well. Thank you, sir.
Mike, thank you so much for being the extraordinary leader you are, and to all your colleagues at Wounded Warrior Project for leaning in as much as you have been. My friends who've joined us, tonight is for you. This is about giving you the opportunity to offer dialogue, to ask questions, to lean on our experts, to learn techniques on how to deal with what we know is a very trying time, hard circumstances for your families and your friends. And so I'm going to turn and introduce those experts now. And I'd like to start by welcoming Bonnie Carroll, who is the president and founder of TAPS, a legend in providing grief support, especially right now for families who've lost loved ones, such as the 13 heroes we lost last week. Bonnie, thank you so much for being here. Dr. Sonia Norman is director of the VA PTSD consultation program at the National Center for PTSD, doing such crucial work at VA, and we're just so glad she could join us this evening. Dr. Amit Saoud is executive director of the Global Center for Resiliency and Wellbeing, a legend, a national expert in mental health and resiliency. And Dr. Saoud was with us in our first session a couple of weeks ago, and we welcome him back. And finally, Ryan Cools, a valuable member of the Wounded Warrior Project team, and a key partner in helping us deliver services and support to our community. We're going to begin with some questions that we received from participants as part of the registration, and we received a lot of them. I invite everyone listening to continue to ask your questions in the Q&A function in the Zoom box or within the chat, and we're going to get to as many of these questions as possible. First, I want to turn to Ryan. Ryan, you're a veteran. You've done so much work around combat stress and mental health for Wounded Warrior Project. One of our viewers asked us, this came in right before we started, what happens when the news and media have moved on from the events in Afghanistan, but my veteran and my family have not? A great question.
Steve, I appreciate the question and appreciate being able to be a part of this panel. I served in Iraq in 2005 and lost my right arm and left leg. And in the 15 years since my injury, have been able to stay involved with the veteran community. And that is really the advice that I would give to those folks that when this is not on the front page of the newspaper, on the TV when you turn on, is really staying involved and staying committed to the community that we're a part of and the organizations that are there to serve and honor and empower us. Organizations like Wounded Warrior Project, organizations like Elizabeth Dole Foundation, and the many others that are out there. Staying connected to one another is something that I have personally been able to benefit from, and I feel that it is something that would benefit lots of other folks to be able to do that.
I might add, Steve, that I think it's important that the media might forget, but your body, mind, and soul are so involved in this that it's not fair to expect for you to forget. And so what you cannot do is erase the memory, but you can change your relationship with that memory. So instead of focusing on lost meaning, you focus on the meaning that you preserved. You laid the foundation for the success for the next 20 years. So change your relationship with the memory, because our memory is not like encyclopedia. It's more like Wikipedia. Every time you visit it, you can change it. When you revisit it, then think about hope, think about meaning and purpose, think about gratitude, think about compassion, think about connections, think about pride and courage and faith, and bring that all in that memory so you change your relationship with it.
Meet, that was a great answer. Bonnie, a question that we received that I'd love for you to comment on, given all the amazing work that you do at TAPS for the survivor community. Is it possible that some of the emotions veterans and their families are experiencing right now are considered grief? And can you talk about the types of grief and the stages of grief that individuals may be experiencing beyond these immediate days?
Oh, thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate that. You know, I lost my husband in the Army. He was killed in an Army plane crash. He was a combat veteran, but died stateside. I had the opportunity to serve for over 30 years as a reserve officer, and then as a Department of the Army civilian, and then with TAPS, spent a great deal of time in both Iraq and Afghanistan. But right now, it is grief not only of those we have lost, but also the loss of the identity of who we were prior to this experience, because it has changed us. In my own experience, getting to know the people of Afghanistan, getting to be there and see the hope and the opportunity and the promise, and now re-examine that and feel it may have been changed. Dr. Sood, I'm so grateful for what you just said, because you are exactly right that whatever happens going forward does not change the good that was done, the impact that was made. Grief is the normal human reaction to a loss of any sort, and anger can be part of that. Grief is not a linear experience. Grief changes constantly. We re-grieve many of the experiences and the losses that we've had. Right now, we're seeing our surviving families who are re-examining the losses that they have suffered and looking at them in different ways now. For many of our families, they actually are sharing renewed pride and a sense of hope, and in some cases, knowledge that their loved ones' experience had a tremendous impact, and what they were doing at that moment in time had tremendous meaning and presented opportunity for lives that will be forever changed. But it is, Steve, this is a very, very difficult time. And what we can do to help assuage the grief is be together with others who truly understand, to be with peers, to speak openly and authentically about what we're feeling and have that normalized and validated. We've got to come together as a community, share the experiences, the lives that we've touched, and the differences that we have made.
Bonnie, thank you so much. And for all those listening in, TAPS is there for you if you're a veteran, if you're a caregiver, if you're a civilian. We're putting their website and phone number in the chat box. They're available 24/7. I've utilized their services. I've had my ups and downs through these circumstances. Important for me to say that and to admit that I've needed help. So if you need help, reach out to Bonnie's team, reach out to a friend, reach out to our organizations, and we want to be there for you. I do want to acknowledge and apologize. We're having a technical issue for some reason. We're having a problem pinning the speaker to the screen, and our tech team behind the scenes is working it out. So just stay tuned and listen in. These things happen during these virtual days, and we apologize this is happening right now, but we're going to get it fixed. I have a question that we've been getting a lot of, and Dr. Norman, maybe we'll start with you if you can address this. What can I do if I'm having I just talked about my own, Steve Schwab's challenges during these couple of weeks. What can our viewers do if they're having their own challenges in the midst of trying to help their veteran or their families during these trying times?
Yeah, that's such an important question, because everyone's reacting, right? The whole country is feeling this. And of course, veterans who served in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places. I think Afghanistan veterans, it's closest to their heart, but we're hearing from so many veterans in all eras of veterans how hard this can be for them. And as I've heard this from caregivers, I've heard this from people at the VA who are veterans themselves or caring for veterans, that they're having their own reaction and they want to do right by the veteran they're helping. They want to, attend to their needs, but they're also very distressed and it's challenging. And I think in a situation like that, you can't take care of someone else if you aren't taking care of yourself as well. We know that. And so there needs to be a place for that. With your loved one or in a work environment, you want to attend to them and really kind of understand your own reaction so that you can attend to their reaction. Because if you're confused by what's going on inside yourself, if you haven't really looked inside and been honest with yourself and reflected on that, then it's all going to be a jumble with what they're experiencing, and that's not going to help anyone. So it's important to sort of take that time to understand your own reaction and to acknowledge it and to sit with it and to say, okay, I'm having these feelings. This is hard. Here's what I'm feeling. And then really listen to the veteran, because otherwise it's easy to assume they're reacting exactly how you're reacting, and they're probably not. They're having their own reaction. So when you make space for your own reaction, you can then really hear them. And when you can really hear them, then you can really respond to them in a meaningful way, in a way that they feel heard, in a way that you can then think about what they need. So I guess it's two parts. It's sort of take the time to take care of yourself, do the things you need to take care of yourself, get your own support with your own peers, with your own resources, and then use that reserve to really take care of the veteran who's struggling.
Dr. Norman, thank you so much. Dr. Sood, can I have some thoughts from you on that question as well?
Sure. I feel, and that's a great response, Dr. Norman, I feel we absorb each other's nervous system. So when I am happy or calm, then my loved ones are happy and calm, and vice versa. So a lot of things you can do to take care of yourself. For example, don't forget your hydration. I think 50% of those who are on the call right now perhaps did not drink enough water today. That's what research shows. Do not forget micronutrients. Thank you, Dr. Norman, for drinking your water. Do not forget.
Thank you for reminding me.
Yes, your diet, your sleep. Sleep is a productive time when your brain is resting. Then focus on, things like meditation or prayer or spirituality that brings you peace. Have a corner in your house that gives you peace, where you can go. Maybe you have your grandma's picture and your Bible and other spiritual texts where you can go and sit with peace. Do some life-enhancing practices such as music, such as poetry, such as pottery or sewing, whatever works for you. Bonnie knows so much about horses and how they can be therapeutic in your life. Certainly have friends and colleagues and counselors and coaches to help you if that is what is needed. So whatever you do, I think it'll be ideal if in 2025 you can look back and say, I'm healthier, I'm better connected, more spiritual, and perhaps happier today because I made all the efforts to improve my well-being during those very difficult times.
Thank you, Dr. Sood. I'm going to stick with you for a second. Given your experience and knowledge of resiliency, we've gotten a lot of questions on resiliency tonight. Can you talk about the differences between anger and grief? One of our participants noted that sometimes they can't tell if they're grieving or if they're angry.
And, I have experienced both, and they coexist. Sometimes you're sad and then you suddenly become angry. Grief is often your emotional response to a loss, and anger is part of grief. So perhaps what you're saying is difference between sadness and anger. So sadness is more internally focused emotion. You sort of have lower energy with sadness. You've lost something that you're sorry about. Anger, on the other hand, is to fix a problem. Anger evolved for us to make a change, to sometimes take revenge if we have to. So anger is an externally oriented emotion with a lot of energy. And sometimes grief and anger can cycle with each other. So both are ways to respond. The important thing to realize is the word is emotion. And in emotion is the word motion. So there is a place for grief and there's a place for anger as long as they're in motion. They don't stay with you and stick with you for a very long time. That's the key. So keep your emotions moving. And when you have grief or sadness and anger, mix that with hope, with gratitude, with compassion, including self-compassion and self-forgiveness and faith, so that the overall experience is different. The tea is bitter for all of us. What we want to do is add some honey, and that is the honey of compassion and gratitude and kindness and faith to make it a little bit more palatable.
Dr. Sood, thank you so much. Such practical advice, really, really helpful. Mike, I know you're still with us. I want to direct a question to you. Someone asked us to direct this question to you. How do we prepare our loved ones for the road ahead, not knowing how long this will last or what's next? And further, how are you processing all that's happening in Afghanistan? You personally, Jeff wants to know, with the upcoming anniversary of 9/11.
Yeah, Steve, I'll tell you personally, I look back on my tours in Afghanistan early in 2002 as a brigade commander, and from 2009 to 2011 as the chief of plans for the surge, actually, when President Obama made the decision to increase troop strength by 40,000. I remember the country when I left in 2011, and certainly the country a year ago was not the country that I remember when I was there in 2002. And the opportunities of the last 20 years provided by certainly those that made the ultimate sacrifice, and the 3 million or that have been there since then. Those opportunities provided for the Afghan people won't be forgotten by the Afghan people, the majority of which are under the age of 25. So as I said in my opening comments, not only keeping our country free and safe, protecting each other on the battlefield, but also providing opportunities that we never know what those opportunities will provide in the future. I think we should be very proud of our service and sacrifice and the teamwork with our Afghan partners and our NATO partners. And for me, I'll think of 9/11 as what it was, a time where our country came together, as our country comes together now in honor of our Gold Star families and those that served in Afghanistan and Iraq, and just thank them for their service and sacrifice, what they meant to us and the freedoms we enjoy as Americans. And I have personal opinions as well on the need to, I think we're going to talk about it later on the call tonight, making sure that our Afghan partners that were with us in that fight, as many of those that we can protect and bring to safe places as well, I think is a commitment we all share, and something that we at Wounded Warrior Project have been deeply engaged in over the last couple of weeks.
Mike, thanks for mentioning that. I know so many of us have been grappling with the emotions related to our American friends and our allied friends on the ground in Afghanistan, especially now that we've officially, Americans have left Afghanistan. But so many of us, as Mike has suggested, continue to stay focused on the needs and the evacuation of friends and partners on the ground there. So important for folks to know that there's still a lot of great organizations and dedicated Americans working on this. And I want to also acknowledge we're working on these technical issues. Stick with us. I know folks are really appreciating the dialogue. At least you can see Mike, and Mike, you're not so bad to look at. So, hey, we're going to keep going. Dr. Norman.
I'm going blank screen, Steve.
All right, great. Dr. Norman, more than a few questions have come in asking how long folks should expect their veteran to be experiencing grief, anger, or frustration. I'd love for Bonnie and you to both weigh in on this. What advice do you have for family members that are supporting veterans, and how long will this road be?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's really going to vary person by person. I don't think there's any roadmap to what every veteran will go through. So I think the important thing is to pay attention, to check in, And, you know, and it's also not linear. It's not like someone's going to struggle and then one day they'll be okay. There'll be ups and downs. There'll be better days and worse days. Hopefully, gradually over time, they'll feel better. And if someone isn't, then certainly that's a good time to engage, you know, get help, outside help, mental health help, if that's what seems to make sense. But I think that, you know, the biggest thing is to listen, to pay attention, to check in, to see how someone's doing. And for someone, you know, maybe they'll get really upset. They'll kind of have some cathartic kind of experience, and they'll go on and they'll say, okay, this sucks, but I'm okay. And for other people, it's just going to hit really hard. And you know, and as we've seen this past week, the news is different every day, and you know, we don't know what tomorrow will bring. And so some things someone might, you know, roll with, and then some piece of news based just on their own very personal experience one day in Afghanistan is going to hit them really hard. So I think the thing to do is really to pay attention and not to have expectations. And I think one thing that's really hard for people is when, you know, like, wait, this was 2 months ago, why aren't you over it? You know, there's no roadmap. That's not the thing to say. There's no, you know, everyone's going to go through this at their own pace, and that's always okay. So just be there with the person without, you know, sort of expectations.
Dr. Norman, thanks. Bonnie, more thoughts on that?
Yes, and Steve, Dr. Norman, you absolutely worded that perfectly. You know, TAPS is the organization for the families who are grieving a loss, regardless of how or where that loss has occurred. And what we're seeing with our families, it is a lifetime. It's a lifetime of honor and remembering their loved one. That it isn't over time about the moment of or manner of death as much as it is about the life lived. You know, in America, we honor all those who have served and died with the same headstones, regardless of how or where that death occurred. We have the same benefits for the surviving families. We have the same folded flag that is presented to the family. This is how America honors all who have served and died. But grief causes us to redefine our relationship with the deceased. It really isn't about saying goodbye or forgetting that person. It's about really becoming their living legacy of service and sacrifice. So at TAPS, we have a wonderful saying that our lives will be our tribute. And that is how we honor those who we have loved and those we have lost, is by living a life that is richer for their having lived.
Bonnie, thank you so much. Dr. Sood, any comments from you before I turn to the next question?
Yeah, in addition to the excellent comments by Bonnie and Dr. Norman, I have, you know, there's 3 factors in addition to individual factors. One is how deep was your hurt? 2 is how deep is the current challenge? And 3 is what kind of support you have. The deeper the initial hurt and deeper the current injury, the longer it will take to recover. But you can shorten that by the support you provide. So having patience, not challenging people, not judging them, validating them, all will help in providing support and resources. One of the worst things we can do to someone in pain is to judge their pain. And one of the best things you can do is to validate them. You know, in patients, let's say with chronic pain, physical or emotional, the one single factor I see that differentiates between those who do well and those who do not are the ones, you know, do they feel validated or do they feel judged? So validate them, and that's how you can shorten the course.
Thank you, Amit. Wonderful, wonderful question, or excuse me, answer to that question. Bonnie and Sonia, we're getting a lot of comments from folks who are Vietnam veterans. And we know, Bonnie, I've worked with you on this front for many years now. And we know that our Vietnam veterans have been suffering for a while, and that many of them are now realizing service-connected injuries, illnesses, and wounds. You and TAPS have done a lot of work on toxic exposures. What do you say in a special way to our Vietnam veterans and their families who are with us tonight about how what they're seeing happen in Afghanistan reminds them, and takes them back to what they experienced in Vietnam?
It absolutely does, Steve. And it just brings back for so many of our families, particularly our Vietnam veterans, past experiences that we're reliving again, re-examining again. And I love what Dr. Sood said about having the opportunity to take action, to be present now for veterans who are struggling. The Vet Center program at the VA is staffed by many clinicians who are former Vietnam veterans who are there now to normalize and validate the combat loss experiences of today's veterans. It's how we come together as a community and cope with challenges. For our Vietnam veterans, they have lived a lifetime of experience and coping, and hopefully have learned strategies to deal and put their experience into a context that they've been able to live with. That's wisdom that can be passed on now to those in this experience. And that's what we're seeing, folks coming forward, offering to be peer mentors to those who are newly examining their service, but normalizing and validating, Dr. Sue, that's so important, and not judging. It makes it just all the difference. So, Dr. Sue, thank you again for those comments. That was so enlightening.
Sonia, some follow-up from you on the Vietnam question?
Yeah, to the Vietnam era veterans in our audience, I just want to say thank you. You know, you pushed us to do better. We learned so much from you. We can now, you know, use that knowledge to help the veterans of today and to continue to help all eras of veterans. And, you know, I am hearing exactly what Bonnie was saying, how the vet centers, the multi-generations are supporting each other. The Vietnam era veterans are helping the veterans who served in Afghanistan and Iraq more recently. And, you know, and also just, you know, clearly there's parallels, and that this is a very hard time. And for a lot of people, it's just throwing them into old memories and, you know, reminding them of difficult times, and just to also take care of yourself. You know, you're out there helping the younger generation, but remember that you're feeling the pain as well, and do what helps you take care of yourself.
Dr. Norman, thank you.
I might add one line, Steve, and that is to the Vietnam vets here, that my children can play piano today because you fought the war. And to my Afghan veterans, you know, 20 years from now, somebody in this podium will say the same thing for you. All this plays out over a period of time.
Very important thoughts, Dr. Sue. Thank you for adding that. I'm going to turn in just a minute to some friends of ours who've been really involved in the evacuation efforts, some Dole caregiver fellows. Before I do that, a question, Ryan, to you and Dr. Sood. This is a question that we've gotten in various ways, and it comes from Mike and Lucy. My veteran has been watching the news 9+ hours a day, and he exploded emotionally last night. I don't want your help, he said. I don't want to talk to you. My best friend died. They left them, Americans, in Afghanistan. This is horrible. You'll never understand what I'm feeling. And Lucy explains, I'm at a loss for what to do and don't know how to help him grieve through this. Can you give me some practical suggestions? Maybe Dr. Sood, I'll start with you and then I'll go to Ryan.
Sure. Validating and listening are the two most important things. So of the 10 things you can do, the first 6 are validate, 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 and listen, listen, listen. After that, you know, the way our brain's attention operates, it's instinctively guided towards threat. His mind is saying, if I keep focusing on the news, somehow I'm going to be able to fix it. It doesn't work, but that's where he's going. So asking him not to focus there is not going to work, but giving him other options, giving him options related to watching your kids' cute videos that you had from childhood, watching something together like I Dream of Jeannie or Bewitched or something else that you like, or a movie that you like to watch. So give him something else instead of completely asking him not to watch anything. Praying together, having spiritual time together, engaging him in activities that involve his hands, you know, pottery or something else, something new and different, making a dollhouse, something else, maybe doing something to support other veterans, writing cards, activities where he's actively engaged instead of passive TV watching. That will pull him out of that allure of 9 hours of TV. It's not healthy for our brain, but again, not judging him for that, because brain is instinctively designed to do that. In one study, people were asked, what kind of news do you want to watch? And of the people who said, we only like to watch the positive news, then these people were shown a mix of positive and negative news, and they were glued to the negative news. Such is the pull of negative news.
Wow, Dr. Sood. Ryan, your comments, and if you might also, Aaron in the chat room asked, outside of clinical help, what else is available to help with mental and physical pain? So why don't you take both of those?
Certainly. Dr. Sood, I very much appreciate those comments and agree with them. Being able to listen, validate those feelings that are completely normal, I think is extraordinarily key. And then really finding some things that resonate with that individual that they enjoy. They enjoyed before the news came on, be it going for a walk, going fishing, whatever the case may be, that gets them out of that opportunity really to be able to focus on taking that back in, and certainly an opportunity to have some of that joy back. So to get into the question as far as some of the opportunities that are out there that aren't necessarily clinical help, and maybe some opportunities that might help that veteran that is sitting in front of the TV watching the news, is really looking at some of the programs that are out there to serve veterans that aren't clinical in nature. I'm very fortunate that I run a program with Wounded Warrior Project called Project Odyssey. It's a cohort-based program that takes place with a week-long in-person workshop, and then 12 weeks of follow-up after that. And it really uses the outdoors, nature, to be able to teach veterans and couples coping skills and ways to deal with some of the stresses that they may be experiencing through activities they may never thought they would be able to do again, be it like whitewater rafting or high ropes courses. So great opportunity to get outside, get out into nature, and really be able to take advantage of some of the beauty that we have in this world. It certainly is an opportunity to really see a network of individuals that are maybe struggling with the same things, and realize that folks are not alone, and there's other folks that are going through some of those same issues, and really being able to create that bond and cohort to know that there is support. You have friends on your right and left that can help you get through some of the good days and also the bad days as well.
Ryan, thanks so much. I'm going to switch gears here just for a couple of minutes because I'd like to recognize a special group of individuals who've been very involved with evacuee and refugee efforts right within our Dole Foundation family. A number of our caregiver fellows have been supporting countless evacuations from Afghanistan. We were on the phone with them a lot of this weekend and through this week, and they're now getting really involved in the refugee efforts. I'd like to turn it over now to Emery Poplowski, Mary Alamejits, Rebecca Porges, and Helen Perry, and also Christina Walsh.
Hi, thank you so much, Steve. I have to say, first of all, I'm not a person who regularly finds myself fixated on the news, but these last few weeks, I'm not able to say the same. I have found myself sitting right next to my husband, taking it all in. During this crisis, I recognize that there's many allies still overseas. These people are like family to many military members, including those who are active duty. So many of them were watching with the inability to do anything. While they couldn't act, while they couldn't act, I felt that I could be a voice for them. And although others are clearly more qualified of the job of rescuing people, I felt this was an opportunity to step in and take action for those who have protected me for so long. Many of these people in Afghanistan are those that have helped soldiers like my husband to navigate in a foreign country. Many of these people put their lives on the line to keep our military safe while they accomplish their mission. We owe it to them to get them to safety. Even though I knew we owed it to our allies, I wasn't sure how to accomplish this. And while I was doing some calls here and there, I was able to connect with other fellows, Emery and Rebecca, who were already in full swing taking action. I asked what I could do, and we went to work. Helen, who is another Elizabeth Dole Fellow and nurse practitioner, is a part of this group also. And unfortunately, she wasn't able to be here tonight. So many of us, including myself, have been in situations where we're really just not sure what we can do. Sometimes I've done nothing or said a prayer, and sometimes I've quietly wished I could just change the world. I think in the last few weeks, we've seen so many Americans who are taking actions on behalf of our allies. And there are many ways that we can help if we feel the need to do so. So while the US has left Afghanistan, many of our hearts remain. There's still much work to be done, and we will continue our mission. I'd like you to please meet my friend Emery, who will talk a little bit next about what's been accomplished over the last few weeks.
Thank you, Mariella. And if you can't hear me, let me know. I've been having a little issue, so I'm logged in on 2 devices. And you'll see my daughter coming in. Right.
Go ahead, Emery.
It's been a family effort. But so basically what it kind of came through, and my girls are here because they've been in the background watching me work for the past 2 weeks on everything. This came through as a bunch of us realizing we wanted to help our friends. We felt hopeless. I think like everybody watching the political situation, whether you're left or right, we didn't know what to do. We were watching those within our community struggle at pulling out and working with those feelings of this is a country that we've been close with for 20 years, that we've really connected with, and then just started trying to find our own support system. And thankfully the Dole Foundation's there, and us fellows are already close anyway. So I was looking for help for a friend, and then I saw Rebecca had posted looking for help for her friend. So we private messaged, and then we connected with somebody in DC who was also trying to look for help. And then it just grew from Mariella came in, Helen came in. Helen has an NGO background, so she was helping us out with forms and the embassy and all that logistic stuff of how do you get someone out, and the State Department kept switching different forms. So we're managing to, get everything done, reaching out to Senator to help her, have her advocate on our behalf so that we can go and help, our allies and, family members and friends that are overseas. For myself, I was in 10th grade when 9/11 happened. A classmate's mother was on the second plane, and we were sitting in Massachusetts. You could hear the planes from Otis Air Force Base fly over our high school to go right to New York City. And my entire adult life, we've had our military presence in Afghanistan. And I've watched so many of my friends, grow up in school, go to it. My cousin's family, my husband he went to Iraq more, but get injured going overseas. And now this is almost I was trying to look at what is our next step, because we're not at war specifically anymore. And with this, and Helen was really great with her experience, we've organized Save Our Afghan Allies. It's very, very informal, just networking. And what we've been doing is trying to share the resources that are out there. There's currently a lot of great military organizations who are starting up, support drives for the refugees, the SIV applicants who are coming here stateside, who literally, and what I'm saying, they've left, they destroyed all their documents. Maybe they have the clothes on their back. They don't have anything. So we're, trying to share information to help them resettle here. There are some still stuck in different areas overseas because of paperwork. And, our government, we love paperwork and forms, and making a new form because that form looked bad. So we're going to make 10 more forms. And so
Emery, we just have another minute or two here. If you
okay, and then so we're going through, and so it's a lot of that stuff helping out, and really getting together. And Rebecca Borges, I know she was having some tech issues. I don't know if she's had logged in or not, but if not, you can just look at Save Our Afghan Allies. And it's it's not just us, there's a whole team of Dole fellows behind us that therapeutic wise, this is what's been helping us out, and getting our veterans involved, that stopping them from feeling hopeless, and doing something active besides just sitting down, maybe just sharing links and stuff. So it's, a good way therapeutic way to help out and to help cope as a caregiver, and for the veterans to get it done. So I guess wrap up there.
Mariella, Rebecca, thank you all so much for the incredible work that you've been doing. Save Our Afghan Allies project, they're following the advice of our experts who've all said, pour your mind, body, and soul into actions and activities that are productive and helpful. And we couldn't be more proud of our community and the way that they've stepped up and We're seeing this happen across our communities, TAPS, Wounded Warrior Project, employees at the VA, and we just wanted to spotlight those wonderful folks for you. We have a question we're getting right now on Facebook. Bonnie, can we apply the steps for grief that you've talked about to help with survivor's guilt?
Oh, gosh. Steve, that's tough, and I would almost refer to Dr. Sood on that, but grief is that normal human reaction, and it is a normal human reaction also to reflect back on what could have been done, what should have been done, and that may not be productive. But I'd actually love to hear Dr. Sood's thoughts on that.
Sure. So survivor's guilt and grief are both they are understandable, but in extreme, they are not helpful. So I think one of the lines that I many times like to share is the good people are very good at feeling bad about themselves. So if I may ask the person who asked this question, have you felt bad about yourself in the last few weeks? And if you have felt bad about yourself, it's a proof that you're a good person. Bad people don't feel bad about themselves, but the good people do. So the good people often experience survivor's guilt. They feel like, if I survived, it is because in my place, someone else perished, or I should have perished. But that is absolutely not true. That's not how it works. There is a difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is the feeling that something wrong happened through me. Shame is I am bad. Never have shame. Guilt in small doses can help by two things. One, guilt helps you convert this feeling into action. When you do something to overcome the guilt through self-compassion, compassion to others, or other pro-social action. So that's how, so when you are feeling guilty, you convert that guilt into action, and that's how you can dilute the guilt. The survivor's guilt can be experienced at all different steps of grief, right from denial to acceptance. I think the earlier you are in the phase of grief, the more likely you're going to have survivor's guilt. But once you come to a place of acceptance and develop wisdom, then you develop that maturity and hopefully post-traumatic growth. So those are some initial thoughts. Dr. Norman, do you have any other thoughts in addition to what we have shared?
Yeah, those are wonderful thoughts. About a decade ago, I was running a clinic, a PTSD treatment program at the San Diego VA for veterans who served in Afghanistan and in Iraq post 9/11. And one of the things we were seeing so much of was guilt. So, it was a PTSD program, but we weren't seeing all this anxiety, all this, fear. We were seeing all this, like, I'm here because I have to live with something I did or didn't do, or this event I went through. And they're telling us these stories that, happened when, these veterans were 18 years old, and now they're living with this guilt. And, I actually started, doing research on this and writing about it, and asking veterans lots of questions and realizing the many reasons they were feeling guilt. And we started doing interventions. And one thing we realized is we could do sort of like all this great intervention to help veterans realize, like, oh, I couldn't have done anything differently in this situation. There was no happy ending. It wasn't that I made the wrong choice. There was no good choice. They could logically realize all this, and then they'd still feel the guilt. And so we started asking, what is this guilt about? What function does it serve for you? Clearly, you're very tied to it. You're even when you say, I see that I shouldn't feel it, you feel it. And we realized that what it was an expression of values. And people need to express their most important values, their core values. And when we started asking questions, veterans would tell us, if I didn't feel guilty, then I'd really be a bad person. Then how would I honor the memory of the person I lost? Then what would stop me from doing other bad things? Like, the guilt was sort of a way to show their moral compass. And so we said, okay, we need to help them fill their lives with other meaningful things, so they have other ways to express these values that isn't through suffering, through feeling this awful, guilt. And so we work with people to help them do exactly the things we've been talking about. Is what is it that you find meaningful? What is it that you find enjoyable? Some things you can't control, and you can't change the past, and you can't change what's happening today in Afghanistan, but you can control certain things. And I love what the fellows are doing. That's an amazing example. But even if it's not directly, tied to Afghanistan, if it's, I'm going to help children here, I'm going to volunteer in a classroom, I'm going to, write letters to a cause I believe in, whatever it is, or, I'm going to be kind to the people I come in contact with today. If you identify some important values and find ways to express them every day, then in some ways that guilt goes down over time, because there's other ways to express values that aren't so much around suffering and punishing yourself.
Great thoughts. Bonnie, I think you had one thing to add as well.
Dr. Norman, I love that you said that. It's taking action. We've now trained over 20,000 service members and veterans to be mentors to the kids. And what we find is this is a wonderful way to really work out what in some cases may be survivor's guilt, to come and be present for the kids, to help them become the living legacies of service and sacrifice, and to take action, to explore grief in a safe space, and to do something to honor their fallen battle bodies. It's been an extraordinary program. And I hope everyone on the call who is service member or veteran would just look into it. It's TAPS.org and the Military Mentor Program, to be with us, to be trained to work with a child who's been affected by loss.
Wonderful program. Thank you, Bonnie. Ryan, to you and Mike, a question that we've gotten a couple of different ways. We have some employers who are on the call with us this evening, and they want to know, Ryan and Mike, how they can intervene and check in with their veterans right now at this sensitive time without coming off as too intrusive. Any tips or thoughts from either of you on that?
Come off of, can you hear me now, Steve?
I can.
Yeah, Steve, I think it's just human interaction. I think if you come from it as in a place of authenticity and honesty and compassion, I think the worst thing to do would be not to engage with, your teammates or your employees that are veterans. It's like that awkward distance or awkward stance. I don't know what the therapist or the doctors on the call would say, but I know it may be difficult to establish that relationship. But once the conversation starts, then it becomes very natural and very open, and it really leaves the veteran that's part of an organization knowing that the leadership cares about them. So I would just say, just wade in, and that may not be good clinical advice, but that's certainly what I would say.
Well, I think folks are looking for clinical and practical advice, Mike, and I think that was very practical. Ryan, other thoughts from you?
Yeah, no, I very much second what Mike says, and being someone that has a physical injury and having individuals that want to know a little bit more about what I'm going through, what happened, I very much prefer the folks that ask and want to understand what happened, want to understand what was able to go through it, and knowing and giving an opportunity to share and educate is really something that I personally appreciate. And coming from a perspective of an employer, just giving that space to have that interaction, being able to validate those feelings that are going on, and really being able to use it as an opportunity for education and growth.
Any other thoughts from any other panelists?
Yeah, I think I would comment on what Mike said, that practical is more important than clinical. First of all, more valuable, I would say. So there is this difference between, you use the word compassion, and that's a very important word. There's this difference between empathy and compassion. Empathy is when you feel their pain. Compassion is when you feel their pain and do something about it. So what we know is empathy actually can sometimes makes you feel worse, while compassion is very uplifting and very energizing. So whenever you convert your pain, your sadness, your anger, your guilt, all the negative, your fear, all the negative feelings into action, as Dr. Norman was saying, that is what is transformative for yourself, for your emotional and physical health, and for the world around you. So convert all your empathy into compassion.
Love that. Love that, Dr. Sood. To Bonnie and Dr. Norman, we're getting this comment a lot in the chat room, and a lot of questions that are coming in. Folks are using the words scared, nervous, and anxious, not actually knowing what the days and weeks ahead are going to feel like. They're used to a world where we were in Afghanistan, and for whatever reason, that made them feel safe. So what should folks expect? I know this is a hard one, but what are the things, Bonnie, we'll start with you maybe, and then go to Dr. Norman. What are some of the things that folks should expect to feel and not be so afraid about in the days and weeks ahead?
Well, Steve, we are surrounded by our military community. We have this extraordinary support. We have resources that we can call upon at the VA, at Wounded Warrior Project, Elizabeth Dole. We have a community that understands, that cares. We can't control what is going to happen in Afghanistan right now. And that produces tremendous anxiety for all of us. There are so many unknowns, but there are things in our world that we can control. And part of that is who we reach out to, who we surround ourselves with, what we watch, what we take in. But it's important right now to focus on the things that we actually can have control over just in our own lives. And recognize that there are circumstances occurring right now that are completely outside our control.
Great, great thoughts. Dr. Norman?
Yeah, I mean, Bonnie said that beautifully. I think sometimes we don't want to feel fear, we don't want to feel anxiety, and we want to talk ourselves out of it. And it's just, how can we not feel that when there's so much unknown, when there's so much in the news, when there's been violence, when there's, with everything that's happening. So just, be kind to yourself, accept your feelings. When we fight our feelings, you think you're going to fight them away and win, but in fact, they stay longer, they dig in, they're harder. So a little bit, roll with it. Yeah, we're all anxious, we're afraid, that's this kind of what this time is calling for. So, be honest with yourself, acknowledge those feelings. I think sometimes we want to say, it's okay, don't feel that, to yourself, to your loved ones. That usually isn't helpful, that listening, that validating, and whether it's validating a loved one, a friend, or validating yourself and saying, yeah, I'm afraid right now. That's incredibly powerful. So, I would just add that to what Bonnie said in terms of knowing, yep, we can't control a lot right now. Yep, it can feel like a scary time, but there are a lot of things we can do. There are a lot of things we can control, and we can, surround ourselves by loved ones and do things that are meaningful.
Dr. Norman, that's great perspective. And to all of our friends and viewers, we are going to take 3 more questions, and then we're going to end our evening with a contemplative, meditative exercise with Dr. Sood, and no one does it better. So stick around with us a couple more minutes. I do want to ask a question of the folks who are with us, and I'd love for you to put your thoughts in the chat room before we all head out. We've certainly been using a lot of words like fear and anxiety and fright, scare, but we've also heard a lot about hope and resilience, and things that we can be doing to be positive and be surrounded by our loved ones. As we're going through these last 3 questions, I'd love for you all to put in the chat room, what are the things that give you hope right now? What are the things that you can suggest to all the friends that have joined us tonight that will help give them hope as well? I'm going to ask another question to our panelists. I'll start with Dr. Sood, and then whoever else wants to take this question on. A lot of folks with us this evening who have experienced this war in unique ways. They were very young when 9/11 happened. Some of them weren't even born. So how do they process the 20th anniversary of 9/11 when they don't understand the full context and history of what occurred so many years ago?
Yes, I think many times in medicine, what we talk about is we can, for example, when we are working with a patient who has advanced cancer, we never say, I understand your pain, because I don't understand your pain. It is only the one who is hurting who knows how it hurts. Every generation has its own set of stressors, from the Great Depression to the World War, to the Korean War, 9/11, and now. So it is best to, in your mind, not judge the other person's pain, recognize it, that it is their pain, and validate them from within your perspective, and sit with them to help understand, help them explain what it meant for them, the experience meant for them. Because it is very difficult for, this is very common that one generation judges the other generation. That's not going to help. I think it is the curiosity of the younger generation and the wisdom, as Bonnie was saying, of the older generation that brings us together. The problem is we lose curiosity too soon, and we get wisdom too late. So building curiosity sooner and getting wisdom that we will have later, combining that and connecting two generations, I think that's very important. And so with open arms, sort of embracing the other person as they are. And one of the best ways, I think, to help and improve the other person is to accept them as they are. One thing I might add to a previous question that was asked about constant worrying. So I found myself constantly worrying until one day I was not worrying. And so I was worrying that I'm not worrying. I said, if I'm worried about not worrying, because that means worry has become my background state. I feel like if I keep worrying, I'll keep my world afloat. So I started doing what I like to call scheduled worry time. So I have scheduled in my calendar, I've got 10 minutes twice a day when I worry. I worry about my daughter's school grades, or my mother's osteoporosis, or everything else happening in the world, my health, whatever comes. But when I'm done with that worry, if the same worry comes at 5 p.m., I tell myself, oh, I have an appointment with me again in 2 hours to worry. It's not going to be perfect, but that will prevent worry from being the background flavor or music for your entire day.
Any other thoughts on the 9/11 question? What are some things that we're just ending the program here that you might give to our audience as we're approaching that solemn anniversary next week? Dr. Norman?
Yeah, I've really appreciated how there has been such a thread of hope through this hour. And so many of the questions have led to sort of answers about, the contributions that we'll see in the future from service in Afghanistan, what those seeds of the education that happened because of it, that, the freedom that happened because of it, what that will lead to. And I hope we could, head toward 9/11 with a seed of that as well, of, keeping in mind all that we planted, all that we did, all that was done, and how that can shape our future.
Any other comments and questions?
If I could, really looking forward to that day. I think an opportunity is to really use it as a time to reach out to others, whether they be folks that you serve with or folks in your community, and potentially use as an opportunity as a day to give back. Certainly it is a momentous day, but I think it's certainly something that we can also use as a seed to plant, to grow into something better, be it a conversation we have with someone, an act of service that we do, or really an opportunity to make a positive aspect of that day that we can really use and take forward.
Ryan, I think that's really wonderful perspective. One of the things that struck me about our country in and around 9/11, and especially afterwards, was how much our country came together, and how divisions were blurred and went away for a long time. I want to end with a question to all of our panelists, and I'd like to hear thoughts from each of you before we head into our meditative end with Dr. Saud. I'm sure we've all experienced a phrase that I've been hearing over and over and over again from the families we support, and that's that did my service matter? What I did in Afghanistan is something people are questioning now. Can you give folks some words, some advice, some perspective on how they can build our friends back up and help them realize that the contributions they made did matter, that the service and sacrifice that not just our veterans and service members made, but that families made and continue to make every day matter? What are the things that folks can be saying to their neighbors and friends and family members? Bonnie, can we start with you?
Thank you, Steve. And I just wanted to speak to our survivor community who is listening tonight and remember that we honor all those who have served and sacrificed, that our lives will be their tribute and we will be their living legacies. Military service is absolutely the highest honor. We have kept this country safe and our military will continue to do that. So I thank you for the opportunity to be here, to include the survivor community and the voice of our families in this evening's conversation.
Bonnie, thank you for the work that you're doing and continue to do so passionately. It's so important. Ryan, why don't we go to you next?
So, one thing that I would say for folks is when you raise your right hand, you committed to service to the country and being able to be a part of something that's bigger to yourself. And whether you serve for 2 years, 4 years, 20 years, you committed to those on your right and left. And that's something that is not going to change. And that's always going to be something that was honorable, just no matter what the outcome of any aspect is. But I just want to make sure that folks remember that's how you serve with your brothers and your sisters and committed to upholding the oath that you took and really taking that as an opportunity to recognize that, understand that's a very, very positive thing. And you did so in an amazing fashion.
Really powerful sentiments, Ryan. Dr. Sood.
Yeah, Steve, I've thought about this many times, and sometimes the way I look at it is, running the Olympic relay race. So you run your lap and you pass the baton to the next runner. You ran your lap the best you could, and you put Team USA ahead. Now we're running the second lap, and then there's going to be third lap and fourth lap. The story has not been written completely, but when it will finally be written, we will know that the Team USA won because you ran your first lap immaculately, wonderfully. You put us ahead. You build the foundation on which we are building the palace.
Thank you, Dr. Norman.
Yeah, completely agreed. You stepped up. You did what your country needed. You served with others with honor. And today feels like the end of the story because we don't know the future. And so, every moment that's current feels like the end of the story, but it's not. It's a part of the story. It's probably not even the middle. And what you did, what you began, what you set in motion, that is going to play out over history, and we will see the benefit of that. Just like our moods go up and down, history goes up and down, and there's awful moments and there's better moments, and the awful moments are not the end. They're just part of the story, and you contributed to what we will go on to see that we can't even imagine yet.
Wonderful, powerful, Dr. Norman. Mike, final word before we turn to Dr. Sood, who's going to help us move into a contemplative end to the program.
Steve, thank you. And I love the comments of all the previous folks that closed. And I just remind everybody that 2.5 million young men and women serve in the military today, all components, all services, all branches, active guard and reserve. And that's out of a population of more than 320 million. So when you look at less than 0.5% of Americans are keeping us free and protecting our friends and allies overseas, then absolutely service matters. And as I flash back to the 20th anniversary of 9/11, I remember at Fort Campbell how the Vietnam veterans came forward and wrapped their arms around our units that had never been in combat in their time in the military, because unless you've been a Grenada vet or something, but they gave back and they helped prepare us and our families for what would be expected in Iraq and Afghanistan. There's so many deployments over the next several years, 20 years, certainly. So I just encourage all veterans that have participated in the global war on terrorism to take the example of the Vietnam veterans that gave back to us and trained us and got us ready and cared for our families when we were gone and wrapped our arms around the survivors of those that paid the ultimate sacrifice, and continue to do the same for the generations of Americans that are watching us as the Vietnam veterans came forward. We need to come forward for them and inspire them to service as well.
Mike, thank you so much. And to all of our panelists and partners this evening, this has been a special opportunity to come together. Our community is going to continue to stick together, to lean on one another. I can promise you that you'll see more of these kinds of events materializing in the weeks ahead. And we need to hear from you. So reach out to info@elizabethzollfoundation.org. Reach out to any member of my team or myself. I know our panelists invite you to do the same. Let us know what you need that you're not getting, or let us know what you need more of to get through these tough times. We're going to be keeping track of our friends and family in the days and weeks ahead. We're going to be mindful of the solemn anniversary right around the corner of 9/11. Let's be mindful of what we've talked about and learned about tonight. And let's be healthy, productive, positive, reliable friends and family members for one another. Dr. Sood, I'm going to turn to you now to take us to the end of a rich and powerful hour.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, friends, for your precious time, trusting us with the time. Thank you, all the panelists. It's truly a privilege to be with you. So this is a 3-minute, very brief practice that I will do, which I try to do every morning to fill myself with resilience and positivity instead of waking up grumpy and angry. So I invite you to close your eyes if you are in a place where you can safely close your eyes and just follow the directions. So imagine you're waking up in the morning. Try to recall where you were in the bed when you woke up, what side of the bed, the color of the floor, the carpet. And now think about the first person in your life who matters a lot to you, someone very special. Recall this person's smiling face. And then send that person your silent gratitude for being in your life. Second person, and think about a person who is on this Zoom call today. I'm thinking about you, Steve, right now. Go back to the first memory of this person. And then send your silent gratitude. Third person. Look into the eyes of this person and notice the color of the eyes. Then send your silent gratitude. Go back in time to a happy moment in your childhood. Maybe when you were a 6 or an 8-year-old or 10-year-old. Recall your hairstyle at that time. And you can smile. . Send a warm hello to your happy, innocent self. Think about someone who has passed away who you loved. Give that person a virtual hug. And then send silent gratitude to that person. When you're ready, you can open your eyes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sood. I send you all public gratitude for being with us this evening. Again, to our panelists, thank you so much. Go to elizabethdole.foundation.org, wwp.org, World of Wounded Warrior Project.org, TAPS.org, and certainly to your local VA and national VA resources. You're not alone. Today, tomorrow, the next day, we're all here to help you. Thank you all so much for joining us. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.